All right. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Saturday. I hope you've had a great week. Welcome. My name is Nathan Goheen. And if you've got any questions or comments or anything, just drop them in the chat and hopefully see those. Let's go ahead and jump right in. This past week, I've been thinking about a quote that caught my eye. And the quote is, two things that painting is involved with: the uniqueness and clarity of the image, and how much does one have to tell. That's by Rothko. The two things that painting is involved with: the uniqueness and clarity of the image, and how much does one have to tell. So, two things involved. Let's start with the second point first. Right? How much does one have to tell? And this got me thinking, obviously there's that old saying, write about what you know. Write, compose, play, whatever your artistic field may be. Play what you know, right? This is very common, and we've all heard it, so I won't talk too much about it. But I will say that if you're curious about a subject and it's not a subject that you know, of course you should explore it through your artistic medium, Maybe just don't use that as the backbone of your art, Maybe slowly integrate it into your art, right? And there's no shame in not having experience. There's no shame in that. You go out and you get it if you want it, right? It comes with living. It comes with exposing yourself to ideas that you hadn't been exposed to. So there's no shame in that. Shame could come to you if you pretend to know, if you pretend to have that experience and you really don't. And I think that this is something that kind of has infiltrated, let's say, the music scene, right? Where it's like these maybe youngsters are pushing ideas that they don't really have, right? They're promoting mindsets that they haven't experienced, right? And it got me thinking that people who promote this mindset, they're not interested in creating the next Pablo Picasso, right? They're interested in buying the next Picasso, right? And they're trying to get the bank account to do that. They want to put the Picasso on their wall. They don't want to be the Picasso, right? I hope that makes sense. The last thing I kind of wanted to mention was a funny little personal story I have. When I was in the 8th grade, I thought I had a brilliant idea for a horror story to write, right? It was a writing assignment. And I thought I had this great idea. But I couldn't get the idea out in a comprehensible way. I just couldn't get it out. Hey, Maria. Good to see you here. I hope you're well. I couldn't get this idea for a horror story out. And then the deadline came and I had to turn in whatever I had, which was not good. And looking back on it, I realized that maybe the assignment wasn't for our teacher to be able to read groundbreaking horror stories, but maybe her assignment was to give us experience in writing, so that when we did have that groundbreaking story, we could formulate it, right? And I couldn't write a horror story because I hadn't experienced any horror. But the fact that I didn't know how to write it is because I wasn't experienced with writing, right? I didn't know how to do it. So that's what the assignment was: get better at writing. And then this brings us, I want to talk now about the first part of the quote. Painting is involved with the uniqueness and clarity of the image. And I love that. And this this clarity of image comes to us through a different kind of experience, right? Not necessarily the life experience, the lived experience. Are you mature in your technique, right? Are you mature enough in your technique to be able to clearly express an idea? You don't need to use the technique that everyone else is using. It can be your very own individual technique, but are you mature in it? I was thinking of a couple other painters like Jackson Pollock, right? Towards the end of his career, he basically invented a technique, or he became associated with a technique, right? Where he would stand above a canvas and pour paint on it, right? So he got to, that's a very specific technique. That was his invention, but he was mature in it, right? So it doesn't matter what your technique is, you just need to have mastery of it. Another thing that will give you clarity of image is, do you have a mental picture of what you want? Because when we create something, we're asking a question. And that could be, what happens when I mix these sounds together? Or it could be, can I convey this emotion that I'm feeling? Can I convey whatever knowledge I have? Can I convey whatever wisdom I have through my artistic medium? And you don't need to know the answer, but you definitely need to know the first question. The answer will be revealed itself when you do the work, but the question is that kernel that gets the creative process going. And the last bit about clarity that I want to talk about is that sometimes clarity can be the elements that make up our piece of music, or the elements that make up our picture. Is there too much going on? I do that all the time. I'm always putting too much stuff in there because I like it, right? I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. I want to put it in there. But then you know what? It actually kind of weighs down the music and makes it muddy. So I've really had to learn to remove what is not needed. And when I started to mix music, right? Before I would write and record music, but when I started to mix it myself, that was a big lesson to me. Because I realized that I was putting way too much stuff in there. And that you've got, how do I word it here? You've got a front, you've got a back, you've got a left, you've got a right, you've got an up, and you've got a down, right? So if all of your stuff is placed at the top and there's nothing at the bottom, then it's going to be unbalanced. If everything's, if everything is on the right and there's nothing on the left, it's not going to be balanced. If everything is always loud, or if everything is always quiet, it's not going to be balanced. You want to achieve a balance. And when we achieve this balance, we get the picture kind of becomes this self-sustained organism, or the piece of music. It's glued together. Each individual piece glues itself to another part. Maybe this color blends really well with this color that's on the opposite side of the canvas. And maybe one image is pressed in the foreground and one image is pressed in the background. And it kind of creates this nice three-dimensional space that we can kind of habitate in. And so sometimes we do need to add to achieve this glue. But more often than not, I personally need to remove stuff. But don't be afraid to add something in if you need to. And that's about all that I had to say today about that. I just love that quote. And I love it because the quote describes itself. It's a clear quote born of artistic experience. Maria, I don't know if you caught the quote, but it said 2 things that painting is involved with are the uniqueness and clarity of the image, and how much does one have to tell. I think that's a cool quote. So thank you for tuning in. I'm gonna let you all go. I'll see you next Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week. And be well and take care of each other.